Gormageth, Kirloch, and thank you to all our witnesses today. We appreciate your time for the opening statements which you submitted to us, and indeed for the promise of further documentation. It's really helpful for us in our pre-legislative scrutiny, and as you've all said, this is a really, really important piece of legislation and we want to get it right. So as archaeology is something that sounds kind of dusty and old, but I absolutely agree with, I think it was Dr. Sharon Green's point that it's really important to our everyday lives. It does actually remind us all that we're all just passing through, and there were those who came before us and there'll be those come after us. And I suppose at this moment in time, our job is to try and help government get this legislation right. So I absolutely agree with the points you've made. And I'd just also like to acknowledge Antashka's reference to the previous ministers, Michael D. Higgins and Sheila De Valera, and others who have worked on the legislation in the past. I suppose I'd like to return just in this couple of minutes to Antashka, and hopefully we'll get an opportunity later to ask more questions. But you've made three specific proposals, let's say, or requests. One relates to the Valletta Convention, and you spoke about how it has been adopted. But I think it would be really helpful if you could explain in more practical terms what specifically would be the benefit of incorporating the Valletta Convention in the proposed new legislation. And you also specifically suggest that there's a reactivation or a reinstatement of the Monuments Advisory Council. And in making that suggestion, I would appreciate if you can elaborate on what you think the value of reinstating the Monuments Advisory Council would be, what the makeup of that advisory council should be in terms of numbers and in terms of the individuals and the skills, I suppose, more so, and the experience that the individuals should have, and then what the benefit of that would be. Gormageth.
Thank you. Antashka, who wishes to take this?
Ian Lumley. Valletta is one of a number of Council of Europe conventions. There are parallel conventions on landscape and architectural heritage. The Granada Convention on Architectural Heritage in 1985 was very effectively transmitted into Irish law in 1999 and incorporated in the 2000 Planning Act. Despite having adopted the 1997 Valletta the 1992 Valletta Convention in 1997, we haven't remotely adopted its key provisions. Valletta, like a lot of these international conventions, is simply named from the place where the final signatory meeting took place, in this case, the remarkable historic fortified city of Valletta on Malta, from which it takes its name. Expanded on previous archaeological conventions in putting new emphasis on the overall context and setting of monuments. I have a copy of the convention here, and in particular, Article 1.3 makes specific reference to defining the architectural heritage as not just structures and features themselves, but their context with the situation on land or other water. So that's the wider context in the land, that's the landscape and physical setting of the monument. And then Article 5.3 sets out the principle in the environmental impact assessment process that there should be full consideration of archaeological sites and their settings. Now, Antashka is a prescribed body, one of the many consultee bodies under planning legislation, but is the only non-government body for our archaeology. And I've had oversight of that function for quite a long time now. And when we get applications of particular sensitivity, we call in local members, people with expertise, academics, others, particularly in relation to more complex projects like road schemes. And what we found is that there has been really over the years a systemic failure to consider the wider landscape setting and context of the monument, or the relationship of monuments and features to their part in being a wider complex, like Tara and Rathcrogan, which was cited in our submission. And there was in fact a significant Irish court judgment on this about 30 years ago in relation to a dump in the megalithic complex in Carramore in County Sligo, where there was an issue to do with a dump in that sensitive area. And the issue of the court judgment was the impact on the setting of the archaeological monuments and the landscape. And the court recognised that it wasn't just the archaeological features, the structure that you could clearly see on the ground, that was of significance, but the wider context and setting. And that's been increasingly recognised in the archaeological world. And as the Secret from Archaeology magazine presented, the drought in 2018, when we had that low rainfall period, dramatically revealed through drone footage and aerial photographs previously unknown sites, and showed the complexity showed that many isolated archaeological sites or features, in fact, were part of larger complexes surrounding them. So that is something that needs to be properly addressed and incorporated into legislation, this recognition of setting of complexes that relate to each other, and the setting of monuments. Because looking at planning applications, there's this unwritten rule about 20 metres, about the whole emphasis is on test trenching, examining the individual site, and not enough consideration being given to the setting and context of the site. And that applies to all categories of development, whether it's a big infrastructure or, say, the building of a farm shed structure near Ringfort, where the landscape setting simply isn't being properly addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Lumley. The second question, I think.
I think, was it, Senator, was it the
advisory council?
The advisory council, yes. I think really the cut and thrust of that would be to, what we're attempting to do, or I think is very important, is to checks and balances. And as we use the phrase, cultural ombudsman, and indeed I looked into it a bit more, and like currently there's 7 divisions, if you like, of the ombudsman, covering from the Gardaí to Defence Forces, the press, financial services, etc. I did note that we do have on Commissioner Tanga, which would be the inquires into complaints from the public where it is alleged that public bodies may have failed to comply with the Official Languages Act of 2003. And I think either or is to go the road of either an ombudsman like Ontanga Gaelic has, and in many ways, if you look on it, that the culture, the heritage of Ireland, it's built on 2 pillars. There's the language, which is of course, for just discourse, but it also contains within it the sagas, the stories, the legends, and it's the vehicle for the oral, if you like. But it's our monuments that are the people who spoke this language, told these stories, etc. These are the buildings and the places they lived in. These are the 2 pillars of Irish culture. And as I think Dr. Green said, Ireland is built on its cultural uniqueness. That's why we are a republic. And as such, if there is a Commissioner Tonga, quite rightly looking after Gaeilge, where's its correlation? There should be this Court of Appeal, the Ombudsman or the Advisory Council. In the neighbouring jurisdiction, they have the Historic Monuments Council of Northern Ireland, which is up, running and, you know, contributing very nicely.
Sorry, Mr. Clinton, I'm sorry to interrupt you. But
that's too long.
It's all relevant, but we're up to 9 minutes there.
Oh, are we? I have no idea.
I can only keep it to 7 minutes.
My time is up.
But I've no doubt.
Can we, at a later round, come back to it? Because I think my question was misunderstood. I wasn't questioning the merit of the proposal. I was asking Antashka to elaborate on what the membership would be, what they would propose the membership would be.
Thanks, Senator Fitzpatrick. Well, I hope I have to give everybody 7 minutes. It means everybody gets a chance to answer